Hello everyone, welcome back. In our previous sessions, we have designed our first project and we have also designed our first job, and we tried to print the message using our first job, and we have seen some part of the components that are related to the T-message box component. Now in this session, we will go ahead and read a data file and try to print the contents of the data file using TLogRow component. Let's do that. Before that, if you want to save your first job, how do you save that? You are able to see a star mark here which indicates that there are some unsaved changes that are present in the job. For you to save those changes, you go ahead and click this save button here. Click this. This helps. You can also do a Ctrl S. And now once you have the job saved, you see that the star or the asterisk mark is disappeared from this. Let's go ahead and close this. So you have the job 1 here, and now let me create a new job. This is our job 2. Let me give this as job_2nd, and the purpose is to read a file description, and print the contents. Click on finish, and now we have our second job. That's again under the hierarchy of job designs in the repository window. Now if you remember, in our previous session we have minimized our palette. To get it back onto our screen, go ahead and click on the small diagonal or the triangle button that you're seeing, and when you click on this, it also gives you message. If you want to show the palette, click on that, and this has appeared. Expand it, and you can always drag and adjust these windows or the views according to your screen resolutions and according to your comfort. Well, yes, now I'm clearing this. Now I think this is fine for me. Now I want to read a file. For that, I would want to go in the input group, and actually in the file there is a subgroup called input, and inside input I have a component called tFileInput_delimited. What will this do? This will help in reading a file row by row. Let's drag it, and you're able to have the component created in the designer. Now let me create another component. I know the component name. I'm typing this. That's a TLogRow. What does this do? It displays the contents on the run job console. Let's go ahead and call this here. Let me minimize this palette. Now this component, the tFileInput_delimited component, helps in reading a file. TLogRow component helps in printing the contents that it reads or that it is passed to in the console. For TLogRow to have the contents, we should always link it with one of the input sources. Here our input is tFileInput_delimited. See, TLogRow on itself, it cannot print a message or it cannot print some data. All it does is whatever the input data that it is getting from its input source, here it is tFileInput_delimited, that it prints onto the console. Now, so I have to establish a connection between these two components. So let me do that. What is this connection? It's called a row. In Talend, we have connections like a row, and we have connection that is called trigger. First, let me go ahead with the row, and in row we have 3 options. I would choose main, and then I connected this to TLogRow. I'll explain how do we do that again. Let me delete this. So here, go ahead and click on the center of the component that we have in the designer window, and you would see this dotted square box. Right click, and you have an option called row. Go to row, and then click on main, and just attach it to whatever the component that we want to print it for. So now go ahead and click on this. So that's where you establish a connection between two components. As we have seen, there are multiple components because we have already used up main. There are multiple options like reject, iterate, and there is also another option called trigger. We will see when do we use all these. But for now, let's understand how can we read this file and how can the print the contents of the file using a tlog row. Let's go ahead and make some changes to the tfile input delimited component. As we have understood in our earlier session, the view of this is different for different components. Here the properties are different. If you remember for T message, there we have seen a different set of component properties. Here we are seeing a different set of component properties. Let's quickly do one thing. There is a property called file name or stream. This points to the path from where we want to read the file. So now in my local machine, I have folder created. There is a sample data folder and here I have one data file. This is called dataset1. Let me show you the contents of this. I open this up. Here I have 3 columns. There is a name column, there is a age column, and there is a state column. I have couple of entries or couple of values or rows that are there for this. There is a John, there's Robert, we have Bill, and we have their age, and we have the corresponding state. John lives in Texas, and then Jay lives in NC, and then Bill lives at Kansas. These are the different states that a person is associated with. So this is the file I want to read. So how does my file look and what is the structure of my file? It's a comma separated file because these are all separated by commas, and it's a 3-columned file. I mean, there are 3 columns and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows in this file. So we want to see all of this in our console. Let's go ahead and do that. So come back to our studio, go ahead to the file name path, click on this ellipse. These are the 3 dots. This is called ellipse. Go to that place and then go find your path and give that path name. Now immediately you see that this file name and the path name has been taken up here. You can always copy the path or the address path from your folder and paste it here, or you can always go ahead and select it from here. These are the 2 options that we can pass the file name for a given job or for the T file input delimited component. Now we have couple of options like row separator, field separator, headers, footers, limit, skip empty rows, and all of this. I would quickly make few changes. I'm making this as comma and I'm giving the header as 1. And there is another option called edit schema, and we can go ahead and edit schema, do an edit schema, and I'm trying to give 3 columns. So this is a name, this is age, and this is a state. Name is string, age is an integer, and state is a string as well. Okay, I click on OK and it's asking if it wants to propagate the changes. What does this mean? Let's come back in a while to this. Let's first run and see the results and we will come back and explore all of this here. Okay, I'm clicking on yes. Now everything is ready. Now I have a tlog row. So best practice is always rename this. This is input file and this is to print. Go ahead, click on run. That's where it's updating. And there you go. You have the contents printed onto the console. So these are the contents of the file and we have all the columns and we have separated using a pipe. Here we are seeing this printed as a pipe separated values. Okay. What are the further additions or what are the further changes that we can make to this job? how can we write this job instead of writing it to a console? How can we write the contents of this job to another output delimited file? And what are the common mistakes that we do while reading a file and while writing a file, and what are the best practices to be followed, and additionally what are these components and how can we make use of these values that are there in the components or these properties that are there in the components. All this we'll see in our next session.